Broadcasting live. It's America's longest running talk show on computers. It's Computer America, bringing you the biggest names in technology with guest interviews, new products, and your emails. Listen live at computeramerica.com on any device around the world. Email the show at live@computeramerica.com or find us on social media. Be sure to check out our website for contests, giveaways, show notes, live video stream, podcasts, and more. You're listening to Computer America.
Hello and welcome into the Computer America Show. We are the nation's longest running and nationally syndicated radio talk show on computers and technology. Thank you for joining us. I hope all of you are having a great Friday and ready to head strong into the weekend. Have some fun, take your mind off of the busy week that we've had. And I can tell you here on the show, we've had a great week of guests. And yeah, we are going to finish strong with one of our favorite correspondents, the one, the only Popzara magazine, Mr. Nathan Evans. And yeah, we have a full docket to talk about in terms of, topics. So yeah, before we introduce him and before we get started with our show, a few things all of you should know about, including computeramerica.com. That's where you'll find everything and anything for today's show, be it a link to our guest website, any articles, videos, demonstrations, anything we do here on the program can be found at computeramerica.com. Also, while you're there, be sure to check out, we actually just put out an article from, we just had them on this Wednesday, and yes, they are now a sponsor of Computer America, and we just put out an article concerning one of their products, and it was the OWC Mercury Elite Pro 3 terabyte hard drive. You go check that out if you have some time. And let's see. Oh yeah, the other thing is a social media contest, which is brought to you by Logitech. We will have a prize announced later on in the program today. We will read the winner's name live on the air, and we will get in touch with them and, have their prize sent right out to them. Also, be sure to check out the live video stream where you can watch Computer America and not just listen. So all of that and more at our website, computeramerica.com. And there we go. That's enough of a deviation. Why don't we go ahead and get started with our guest? So joining us, he joins us every last Friday of the month, I believe, is his usual schedule. And yeah, he joins us to talk everything from pop culture, video games, movies, technology, of course, just anything and everything having to do with his publication, Popzara. And you can find more at popzara.com. But welcome onto the program once again, Nathan Evans. Nathan, how you doing?
Hey, Ben, you left out existential angst and transitive verbs on that list of things we talk about.
I don't even know what half those words mean.
Nobody does. They're made up.
Okay.
So good. But they sound smart. Don't you want to pay me some money and take a college course or join a cult?
Absolutely. So with those words fresh in our mind, because we don't know them, we will say that welcome onto the show. And yeah, so before we get started, why don't we give a little bit of background on what you do in your day-to-day over at Popzara?
I wake up at, crack of noon.
Mm-hmm.
I laze about. I eat Cheetos.
Mm-hmm.
I try not to do any work. I answer a few phone calls for bill collectors. And hopefully, if I'm not in bed by 1:30 in the morning, I wake up and do it all over again. No, I'm just kidding. No, manage a team of people who want to be this and that, strive for excellence, and we have a cartoon dinosaur. It's good enough for a lot of companies. It's good enough for you, and it's good enough for me. We like it.
Yeah, no, and of course you're always improving. You're always, chasing down the latest product, movies, video games. You're doing reviews. You're doing product cameos. And hey.
Yeah, within the release window, I should say.
Right.
And like for example, today you're a gamer, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if you're a gamer, then you're probably excited about one of the two games that came out today. You're probably excited about either Monster Hunter World or you're probably excited about Dragon Ball Fighter.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
both
of those
both of which you can read later on Popzara, but not today.
Awesome. So yeah, definitely check that out. So, but with that being said, you do come on the show and we, we talk about some articles that either catch your attention or I haven't been able to get to this week. And we have a number of them, which again can be found in the show notes later on in the after the show. But so I believe you gave me the power to choose which one we're going to start with, and I think we're going to start with, and we'll just touch lightly on this. I kind of want your reaction because anyone out there listening, if you were listening to yesterday's show, we actually covered loot box regulation in Washington.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yes, so we covered that yesterday, but I did want your reaction because the skinny of it, everyone who wasn't paying attention, was that Washington and actually a couple of other governments and regulatory bodies, they see loot boxes, which have become a staple in almost every video game out there. They see it as a small form of legal gambling for younger audiences. So they're looking to crack down on it. They want odds posted or even the whole system removed. And yeah, I wanted your reaction, Nathan, on how you felt about
Sure,
loot boxes. And then,
sure.
yeah.
I will give you two answers. I'll give you a bonus.
Sure.
So I will give you one of those things. One of the reasons you have me on the show is because you presume that I have some prior knowledge,
Mm-hmm.
uh, which could be deceptive, and you assume that I talk to people who are in the know. Well, congratulations, Ben. You hit the jackpot. I'm going to give you two answers. One, I do encourage your listeners to go to popzara.com, and under podcast, we talked with someone by the name of Matt Piscatella last week. Matt Piscatella is the head of NPD Gaming. NPD, of course, is National Purchase Diary, and they track video game sales and estimates. If you read about video game sales, Matt wrote it. He's the guy who literally runs the tap. He writes. That's his job. And we had him on the podcast, wonderful guest, and we talked about loot boxes and what he thought of them. And the general consensus is that they seem to be having adverse effect on game sales, but not a big adverse effect on game sales. For example, most egregiously, the game that I know we're both referring to is Star Wars Battlefront 2, a game so larded, not loaded, larded with loot boxes that it actually caused fissures in the media where Disney stock dropped and people cried out in terror. And I think that's one of the inspirations for this bill, by the way, in Washington State, which we don't really expect a lot of loony bills from Washington State. We expect a lot of Looney Tunes bills from Washington, D.C., maybe San Francisco with California, but I see the crazy is migrating northward. So you're talking about this bill that would make it. Oh, excuse me. Are we talking about the news story or the loot box story still?
We are talking about the loot box story.
Okay. So basically, loot boxes basically it's a poison. It's sort of like a virus, a malignancy that has migrated away from freemium games on mobile, as you know, and it's sort of infected console games. Now, if you tell me something, if you tell me that I can get Dragon World or Dragon Ball Fighter for free, and like games have done, and I can pay to unlock characters afterward, I'm okay with that. I don't like it, but I'm okay with it. But if you tell me I have to pay full price and I get to pay for the privilege of maybe unlocking something that will finish the game, there's no part of that I'm okay with. How it relates to gambling, I don't know the law enough, but I do know there's probably some pre-existing law that a smart politician would have actually looked for. Let me tell you what you don't want to have. You don't want to have a scenario of which a new law is created out of the misinterpretation of an old law. And some of the most famous, or should I put infamous, cases in American history have been through a misappropriation of something called the Commerce Clause. Which, are you familiar with it?
No.
Okay, Commerce Clause is what helps make marijuana illegal. There's actually no law against marijuana. Marijuana is taxable, and if you own a sales tax, if you own the correct stamp to sell marijuana, you can sell it legally. And for a long time, using the Commerce Clause for interstate commerce, that's how marijuana and most drugs are illegal in this country. They literally had to misappropriate existing law to make this product illegal, and they've attempted to do the same. I have a fear that with gambling, it's going to affect gaming the same way. So I'm not. Here's my view. I don't like loot boxes. I bring up the previous guest only to say that apparently most people don't seem to have a problem with them either. Despite the nonsense you hear online about chirp chirp chirp, people still buy games like Battlefront. They still buy games like Need for Speed. They still bought Lord of the Rings. There's no evidence that it's hurting sales. What it is, though, it's causing the people who are usually already loud and obnoxious on Twitter to be even more loud and more obnoxious. And that itself is not a reason to legislate. And we live in a very interesting time of which we have a very, very vocal president who tweets out what he had for breakfast and when he took a BM. And so I don't want that to be the basis of policy. Just because a bunch of angry gamers are upset that they have to pay to gamble doesn't necessarily mean it needs to be regulated. However, if it's found that somewhere in their economic coda that EA has basically applied a gambling algorithm to this game, then yeah, maybe it should be regulated. I don't know yet. I
As
want to see the facts that come out.
Yeah, and just a few things. It's just that as a gamer, I think you're right that there is a very vocal, either majority, minority. In your case, you say it's minority. They're very vocal. They don't like the fact that as a gamer, you pay $60 and they still throw in a mechanism that is used to make money off of a game that would
Hmm.
otherwise not make money. And like you said, it's mixing revenue models that
Hmm.
previously didn't have any business touching each other. So,
Yeah,
as a gamer,
exactly. It's again, it's I'm okay with the concept. We all have, you've all been to a community college where they have, casino night where you don't gamble for real money, right? Like people like gambling. Gambling is always part of every game. It's been a part of every game. Do you remember Super Mario Brothers 3 on the Nintendo? You go into the little toad huts
oh
and
right,
there's
yeah,
there's you know there's gambling in there. It's gambling. You had the game Cuphead this year. There's a stage in Cuphead where you literally throw dice to fight the boss. It's chance. Like in a computer programmer will tell you, there's really no such thing as a random number in game theory or with programming. So the illusion that somehow that video games are exempt from this because they've colored it up with a boss battle or whatever is ridiculous. I don't think that EA is offering you money if you win. You understand? Which seems to be the crux of the argument. Now, if you can get a loot box in Lord of the Rings
well,
or Need for
yeah,
Speed, and you get a big fat check, yeah, let's talk. I don't
like
know.
there was some issue beforehand, like the last time that this was brought up with Counter-Strike Global Offensive loot skins, where people were essentially using these weapon remodels. They look different, and they were using these as an intermediary for money, where you could put your money in, you could buy skins, you could gamble with them, and then you cash out. You sell your skins, and you receive money back. That came down really, really quickly on the side that that is indeed gambling, and in fact gambling to a younger audience than 18. That was struck down. But now we're hitting the new one where you're
Mm.
right. You don't turn this strictly back into money, but it is a way to get younger audiences to essentially put up some kind of currency, in a lot of cases
Sure, but
currency that you
but
do
yeah,
buy with
exactly.
money.
But that's video games today. That's DLC. That's microtransactions. Again,
And just we'll wrap this up and move on to the next story. But
yeah.
just to say that Washington, they're not saying we are going to legalize. We're going to regulate this. They're saying um, they are sending this bill that will make the gambling commission see if this is something even that they should regulate. So this is
I
more of a, is this
well,
something we should pay attention to? That's what this
well,
bill is.
I got one final thing to say about this. In the state of New Hampshire, about 18, 20 years ago, there was legislation attempting to basically tie public education funding to horse racing and gambling, and they call it a sin tax, and it's usually applied to things like cigarettes or alcohol. So I'm very circumspect. When it comes to the law, most bills are usually dressed up in language that sounds very flowery, sounds very complimentary, like the Child Protection Act, or something like that. So the idea that they say, well, you shouldn't gamble, you shouldn't smoke, you shouldn't drink, you shouldn't do this horrible stuff, you're going to hell, whatever. But on the other hand, you require a portion of your community to do that to fund public schools. You understand? And you usually see this type of shenanigans in places like New York City or Los Angeles or San Francisco, places that, with budgets spiraling out of control. So I don't know. I'm very circumspect when I see people on one hand say this is bad for you. However, we'll make it reasonably agreeable if we tax it. The stuff that's going on right now seems to be the first step into not necessarily then get rid of it, but to basically begin the process of taxing it. So we'll let you do this if you give us a percentage.
The
And so,
Yeah,
yeah,
I
it's
mean, this is going to extend beyond just what happens here in the U.S. I know the EU has similar laws that they're looking to put into place, and really, like personally, what I hope to come from this is not so much either a crackdown, because I played a lot of games. One of my
mhm,
favorite, League of Legends, that I've never spent any money on, but their system of loot boxes has allowed me to get a lot of uh, a lot of skins and things like that
sure,
for absolutely free.
absolutely. But
There's a good
but
way, and I'm sorry, just real quick, but there's a good way to
yeah.
do this. I hope what comes out of this is just published odds that say you have a 1 in 10,000 chance of receiving this item. That, I think, is something that should have been there from the beginning. Your chances
Well,
of winning.
people play the lottery. Your chances are 1 in several million, if not a
Right, but
billion,
at least you
right?
know them. Right.
Yeah, but you've heard of Dunbar's number, right? The idea that people can't really associate strong friendships with a number more than 150. That's how human beings associate numbers. We could apply Stalin's algorithm to this too, Ben, where he says, one death is a tragedy, a million deaths is a statistic. Human beings don't process a million. They can't even fathom a billion. So you might as well be saying supercalifragilisticexpialidocious for all they're concerned. It's no reasonable metric of which they can make an
It's still
informed
more than
decision
we have
about something.
now.
Is it though?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
I don't know. I don't know. But like, what is it? What's the truth is of the matter is, it's again, it's the dealer's choice. Your chances of winning a lottery ticket are 50-50 every time you play. Your chances of getting a heads or tails are 50-50 every time you play. You either win or you don't, and that's it. That's the magic number. And it doesn't matter if you buy a million lottery tickets. It doesn't matter if you buy a billion lottery tickets. It really doesn't. It doesn't matter if you get loot boxes. This, I agree with you. Maybe some labeling, but tread with caution, because usually when laws go in, they don't come out, and it takes a long time to sort of pluck the splinters of bad legislation. And so I don't know. I don't know. I want to see how this rolls out. I need some more information. I don't, like I said, I am cynical. I think this is the first step to taxing loot boxes. I do.
Uh,
I think it's the first step.
okay.
We'll see if it goes further than that.
Okay, but again, this is going to be settled out in the courts, and I'm sure that video game companies, if they truly believe this is something good for their for their audience, then hey, they're gonna take it to the courts too.
Hey, I gotta reiterate one last time. Despite what you've heard with people henpecking online, I got it right from the horse's mouth. It hasn't affected sales.
Right.
So it has, in fact, Star Wars Battlefield 2 sold even much, much, much better than the first one, and that's with all the controversy.
Yeah,
You know,
absolutely.
yeah, it's crazy.
So with that being said, and Nathan, I'm going to draw your attention to another story that we have also from Washington. You say that Washington is passing bills left and right.
Beautiful state. Beautiful state.
Yeah. Well, now they're trying to make a new one that will affect a lot of technology companies if it's passed, and if it's held up by either the Supreme Court or something like that. This will either change technology as we know it today, or it will make Washington a dead zone for selling technology. And this is a new bill that Washington is seeking to make it illegal to sell electronics that don't have an easily replaceable battery. And again, to be clear, easily replaceable does not mean just like old cell phones that you can swap one or another. Just easier to replace than sending it back to the manufacturer and replacing it. So I kind of wanted your idea on this, because obviously we're going to talk about the iPhone and how soon they're going to be allowing people to control what happens when their battery
Goodness
runs dry.
gracious.
So what's up with this?
I'm of two minds. This battle started about 10 years ago with the introduction of the iPhone and the Samsung phones, where the replaceable battery, the swappable battery, was a big selling point for the non-Apple phones. And one of the problems we're having, and I think they need to consider before they go any further, is the fact that these batteries we're talking about are lithium-ion batteries, which are explosive, and they're considered hazardous. And I think Samsung learned that lesson. But there's been cases of iPhone batteries detonating as well. So one of the protocols, one of the reasons why Apple actually excels all their competitors when it comes to ecological thing, is because of their disposability with batteries. Look at your car. When you go get an oil change, they can't. They just don't dump the oil down a drain, right? They have to dispose of the oil ecologically safely, right? So these batteries, what would happen is, again, on one hand, I like the idea. The concept sounds great that you can replace your own battery, whatever. You can replace your own battery. But people also want small, sexy phones that are the size of paper, and they can stick in their back pockets to show everybody how cool they are, especially women. And so the problem is one of the reasons these phones are so small and sexy is because the battery has been so integrated into the original design that there's almost no way for the average person to open the thing without breaking it. And so it's a compromise. And so I don't really know how this is going to play out. I do think it reminds me of the old problem that happened when I used to live in California, where there was legislation to get rid of plastic bags. paper bags, and they were going to get rid of paper bags because they said they use trees, they're not good for the environment. So we'll have plastic bags, people will recycle them. And the naysayers said, well, if you have plastic bags, people are just going to discard them everywhere. 15 years later, turned out to be true. Plastic bags are everywhere. So now they enacted a new law that would ban plastic bags and require paper bags. So I would say that the variables that go into this battery replacement concept are thought out in a way that benefits the consumer uh, as appropriately as they think it will. Because the idea that, oh, we'll just let them replace their batteries. Well, what if you take batteries out of your, what if you collect batteries out and you can use them in nefarious ways, or you put one under your couch and it heats up with an electric blanket, boom. I don't know. I don't know. The movement has been towards allowing the companies to replace the batteries.
Right.
And I think that has most to do with the design. The designs of these phones are so intricate that they don't want you opening up your phone because you'll probably break it. And so I don't know. Again, I would say the concept sounds good. I'm really going to need to see how the implementation is. Uh, my gut instinct is to say allow it because I actually had an experience at the Apple Store a couple weeks ago. It was very unpleasant. As you know, I'm not an iPhone person. I am an iPod person, and the great Apple debacle with the slowing down, the throttling affects iPods.
Right.
And I brought my iPod in to have his battery replaced, and it turns out I can't replace the battery. Can't replace battery in iPod. Their Apple's version of replacing batteries in iPods is to give you a new iPod,
Right.
but they wanted to exempt me. I had to argue. It was a big deal. Um, had my iPod had a replaceable battery, I wouldn't have that problem. So I don't
I,
know.
I,
I don't know.
I,
I'm on.
I think with this article, and to be clear, we're not asking companies to go back to a Nokia 3310 that you could just slide the battery off the back and slap in a new one. It's just that they're raising questions, such as Apple, where they purposefully glue the battery into place because that's much, in terms of size and efficiency, it's much faster, much cheaper, and much slimmer in design than to make a bracket for it, than to put in screws, than to do
Will
something
you
that you could replace it. They're
have you
trying to
ever
cut
opened
down
up?
on that.
Have
They're
you
trying
ever opened up an Apple product?
absolutely, yeah. I've replaced
Yeah,
batteries, screens, all that kind of thing. Yeah,
yeah. They're not like normal PCs in many ways. Like if you've ever opened up, especially one of their computers, they require their own tools. They're made differently. They're almost intentionally made as difficult as possible to navigate. You know this. It's like Indiana Jones
to
to
call
go
it
in there.
over engineered would be a simplification.
Well, but it's also it is I hate to use Johnny Ives term, but it is beautiful in its design in some ways because it's to maximize your confusion so you don't touch it, so you bring it into someone who can do it. Like when I put a new hard drive in my old Mac Mini, I felt like I was doing microsurgery. Like I was very cautious. I had like a nurse wipe the sweat off my brow. I was like, "Give me this tool, give me this tool." And I was in there, and I had to use toothpicks to like hold the little SATA cable because it was the
Right.
size of a mouse paw, and I felt so accomplished when I did it, you know? And I was like, I am never opening this again.
It it,
So
it 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 certainly feels weird. I mean, and Apple, they certainly don't want people poking around. That's why they say if you so dare as to try to repair your own product, uh, you void all warranty, and we won't have anything more to do with you. We hate you. Like that is an Apple, kind of stance on it. But again, as someone who has fixed their own Apple products, I can only see this as a positive. It is probably going to change if it does get any traction. Hopefully less glue, more screws. Hopefully, but we're not asking people to go back to the 1990s when everything had double D batteries. Instead, it's just make it a bit easier to repair. That's an
I,
important thing.
I, I think there's a compromise to be had. I think there's a compromise. I don't know. Again, it's what happened. You mentioned the EU before. The EU had this compromise where they're going to basically outlaw multi-charge cables. Do you remember when there was like 5,000 different cables? It was micro USB, mini USB, micro USB, all this stuff, and that's why micro USB became the standard for a while.
Right.
And they cited ecological reasons that our dumpsters were full. See, that's such a stupid argument that you really need to be mentally challenged to believe it because hey, we're gonna lessen the load in landfills by making one cable. No, you're just going to replace all those other cables with this cable. And yeah, exactly, it hasn't changed. So again, good intentions are often thwarted by bad execution. So we'll see.
Yeah, we'll definitely see. Although personally,
I lean towards yes. I don't know if legislation's the way, but I lean towards the idea that if you allow me the opportunity, I can probably do it.
well, yeah, and this also goes back to the idea of we've covered this article before, or many articles that John Deere and Apple of all companies are trying to bring to legislators, saying that even though you pay for your iPhone, you may pay for your tractor, you may own it outright. That doesn't mean you have the right to repair it. You have to bring it back to Apple or John Deere to repair your tractor. It's the same fight. It's the right to repair your own equipment.
It's total BS. It's a way to monetize a revenue stream that was previously left untapped.
Yeah, you say that, and Apple says that you're not qualified, and things can go wrong, and your product could explode. You can see
Sure.
both sides, but I am hugely in favor of course, letting people control their own
They
technology.
might be right. Apple could be right and wrong at the same time. They're truly right that the average. I guarantee you, Ben. You want to talk about gambling? I got a bet for you. I bet you $1 million in Monopoly money that Apple's right. That the average Apple person has no idea how to replace anything. Like that's why they buy it.
Nor do they
That's
want
why
to.
they're buying Apple,
Right.
right? So maybe if they allow Kim Kardashian to go in there when she's not busy saving the world to try to replace her iPhone battery, boom, right? Maybe that could happen. But doesn't mean it will because Kim Kardashian's not going to replace her own battery. She's going to take it to the Apple store because that's why people buy Apple products. They don't want to worry about it. It's like, have you ever driven a BMW? Have you ever seen a BMW dealership as opposed to like a Ford dealership?
Yeah.
It's paradise. It's paradise. It has its own little you can buy milk. You feel like you want a massage. It's so much better. That's why you pay a lot more money. You know,
Yeah.
it's like oil change. What are we, heathens?
Oh no,
Let them do
just as a personal story, I did get a Mercedes. It was used. It was from like 12 years ago, but I love that car. It was a great car. The window shattered. I had to take it into a Mercedes dealership, first time ever going, to get the window replaced because only Mercedes had the part. And like they took the car from me, and I felt bad because I had dog hair all over it, and I beat the crap out of that thing. But like they drove it into the repair shop, and the repair shop, I'm used to mechanics that have oil stained concrete floors.
Gross.
They had marble floor, and they were driving my
Mhm.
car on it. I'm like, why are you doing? No, that's like someone's living room. You can't drive the car on. But yeah,
Yeah.
there's a difference, and maybe
It's hard to go
Apple.
back, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's hard to go back. You get treated like royalty.
But either way, so we're getting off topic, but at the same time, we kind of are. You said that Apple can be wrong and can be right at the same time.
Mhm.
I think this has happened just recently, and I think we're going to segue into it right now. And I think Apple was completely right that maybe one of the best solutions for a waning battery was to throttle the CPU so that the battery could at least appear to keep a charge. But they're wrong in probably hiding that and surreptitiously doing it without alerting their consumers. So
Yeah,
you found
yeah,
the story,
they can't win.
and
Yeah, they can't win on this argument. They can't win the story, and it's a matter of they're probably logistically and right, but they're ethically wrong. And this is Apple. So we talked about this before. Anything remotely associated to the word Apple is better at SEO for web clicks. You know this. So we don't call Foxconn. We call it the iPhone factory. We call everything the iPhone this, the iPhone that, because it's better for clicks, right? Much better for clicks. So if Apple comes out and says, hey, we have a scheme, we're going to throttle your CPU in exchange for longer battery life. And that will be interpreted as manufactured planned obsolescence at the gate, which, by the way, it totally is. It totally is. But that's okay. Planned obsolescence is okay if it extends the life of your device, if they're being ethical about it. The way Apple rolled it out was very disingenuous, and people thought their phones were getting slow. And I can attest to this because I have been to the Apple stores. I've called Apple Support, and it's kind of like when you buy web server. You're familiar with Computer America. You buy, if your website's not running right, well, maybe you're using a lot of resources. You should upgrade your plan. The answer to everything is buy more, sell more.
right.
So
Right, yep, Nathan, that music means that we're going to take a
heard
break. Yep, and we'll be right back, everyone, talking to Nathan Evans from, of course, Popzara magazine. Find them more at popzara.com. and find more at popzara.com and more at computeramerica.com. Folks, we'll be right back. We have a lot more stories and, of course, a winner for our social media contest.
We are all Brother Wolf. 10 years ago, a group of locals banded together to create positive change. We took animals into our homes, held adoption events at local retailers, and talked to the community about our mission to help build a no-kill Asheville. A decade later, we have achieved so many victories for animals in need. There's been so much progress, yet there's still so much to do. As part of our year-long celebration, we encourage you to become a member of our special Compassionate Circle program. With a monthly donation of $10 or more, you will have behind-the-scenes access to the work we are doing at Brother Wolf. Our goal is to reach 1,000 members because we receive no government funding. Working together, we can help build and sustain no-kill communities. Learn more at compassionatecircle.bwar.org. We are a 501c3 tax-deductible organization.
And welcome back to the Computer America Show. It is, it is 31 minutes past the hour as we continue on here. And, Nate, before we go back to our article here about Apple and, what they're doing to reconcile or at least fix their problem of throttling batteries, we have a winner from our social media contest. So
We do.
we should announce that before we get back to it. So everyone, what's happening is that if you go over to America, there's a little doodad on the right. It's from Gleam. It's a great service. And all you do is there's like 9 different ways to enter. Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram. We don't have any. No, we don't. But anyway, we should get one. But anyways, all that and more at, of course, Computer America. And someone did that, and now they're a winner. So here we go. We're going to announce our winner. There we go. See, that works nicely.
I like it.
So this week's winner is the one, the only, is Adeline Boyle. There we go. So Adeline Boyle listens to us in Baltimore. There we go. Baltimore, Maryland. And all she had to do was to visit Computer America on Google+. Google+. Yeah, that's a thing. I know. And we give away prizes for it. So, surprisingly. So, there you go. And Adeline, we will message you after the show, get you hooked up with Logitech, and we'll get your prize out to you. So, everyone, if you want to be next week's Adeline, all you have to do, Adeline, Adeline, all you have to do is go to .com and enter. So, with that being said, we are back, Popzara, Nathan Evans, and before the break, we were talking about Apple and this battery. And for anyone out there who has not heard of the fix that Apple is going to implement, it is, and Nathan, I'll let you take it from here.
I like how we call it fix. They're turning it off. They're going to allow you to turn it off. It's now
That's enough of a fix, kinda, I think.
Yeah, it's like, we messed up. No, but you see, they can't win. But here's why it's a problem. Here's why it's a problem, and here's why it's bad. Let me give you an example. I don't know if we talked about this before. So if we talked about this last show, I'm getting old. My mind is going, and my battery is throttling my GPU. So no, but long story short, so there's a game that came out on iPad last month, a full version of Civilization 6, right? On the iPad, the whole shebang, the whole game, $60. And if you've ever bought anything on iOS, which I know you have, you'll know they have these requirements. You have to have it. You have to have this. This game was a mega muncher. It was, it's a port of a very high-tech PC, Xbox One, PS4 game. You need a lot of memory,
right?
And you have to have like an iPad Pro. You have to have an iPad Air 2. You have to have, anything less, screw you. So what happens is if you're a developer, you take chances based on set schematics. And I've always said that one of the biggest assets of the Apple thing, they're pretty good about about creating a sustained working environment for developers. So what happens if suddenly your iPad Pro or your iPad Air 2, which a game designed to run on your GPU, designed to run on your processor, now has the theoretical ability throttled. If it's artificially lessened because your battery's old, you may buy software knowing that you can play it. You might be able to play it, but that software may become unplayable.
Of course.
After the throttling. And so that's just that puts the developer in the position of selling a product and having to refund. You understand? It creates dissatisfaction on the minds of everyone because who's going to get the blame for it? It's going to be the developer. Why'd you sell me this? Apple had this exact same problem when they switched over from 32-bit apps to 64-bit apps. And suddenly a lot of things that were bought and paid for were no longer compatible on new iOS versions. You know, that was probably unavoidable. And so they gave the app developers a chance. They let people know. You remember this. They put out a PSA. They
Yeah.
let people know that your 32-bit apps have to be updated. So contact the developer. They didn't let anybody know this. And so people's phones, their devices were slowing down. And they were told, it's because it's old. Why don't you buy a new one? And there's probably some legislation in there.
Yeah.
There's probably not legislate. There's probably some litigation in there. And I would say the Platons have a case.
Oh
I
no!
do.
If anyone out there listening to this, we mentioned this when it first broke, was that if you have purchased an iPhone or really any Apple product, because like you said, it does happen to affect the the iPods as well. Keep your receipts. There's going to be a class action. I guarantee it down the road that people will be reimbursed for a portion of what
Well,
they paid for.
there's more though. There's more. So the excuse I was given when I couldn't replace my battery, oh, let's downgrade you to iOS 10. But me being me, I basically made the point. iOS 11 has a substantial amount of security upgrades. What if your business What if you do app development and deployment, and your devices are required to have minimum security updates? If you roll back to a previous edition as a band-aid fix to fix a problem that Apple created, you're not doing anybody any favors. Your device could be kicked off networks. It could be shunned from receiving transmitted data. Anything could happen. Anything could happen. And so Apple's in a sticky space. Uh, if they would have disclosed
The
this and they
Yeah.
weren't able to color it and fashion it into something, this is going to benefit you, then people would complain. They complain
the
over everything.
The only thing I think that saves them was, again, independent testing found out about this. We did not learn this from Apple. We learned this from an independent tester who had a hunch. I think it was like a teenager or like young 20 something. And we see tested it, found it to be true, reported his findings. But then he also, like, the part that cinched it was the clinched it. The part that clinched it was was when he replaced his iPhone battery, all the processor power came back. The phone went back to essentially its original state. So, like, if they were really just looking to say, "Hey, your phone is crap," then even after the battery replacement, it should have still been throttled because it was 2 years old.
Well, you know what though? I actually think that Apple was planning on people not finding out because the typical gestation period for an upgrade is usually about 3 years,
Yeah.
which is the cycle. And so
Whenever
maybe the
your
concept was what's that?
whenever your contract is up with your carrier is
Yeah,
when people just throw away the phone and
yeah.
get a new one.
And which leads me, if I'm gonna put on my tinfoil hat, which leads me there might be some conspiracy here where the carriers were the carriers who had to in some cases had to do their battery replacements themselves probably knew about this and they didn't mind it because it basically served their bottom line of getting people to replace their phones. This could be a genuine conspiracy. This really could. And if we had real technical journalists with the means and the know how to do this, then I think a proper investigation. I would love to see discovery in a court case. I would love to see who knew what. This was an intentional misleading of the public in order to, in Apple's words, help prolong the life of your device by infecting it with the very thing that would make you get a new phone in the first place, which is slow
Just
down.
Yeah, just like a number of other scandals, this is definitely a
Mhm.
scandal. Just like a number of other scandals that I can think of. One of them being, of course, the big diesel, kind of
Oh, with
kerfluffle.
Volkswagen?
Yeah, with Volkswagen, and then there were emission
Yeah.
scandals with many other car companies. They found that yeah, this may have been done by an engineer, just like with Apple. It may have been done by a software programmer, but this doesn't start there. This goes all the way to the top. Someone up there had to know what was going on and gave the approval. So, you know, it, I think everyone knew, but Apple did it in Apple's fashion where Apple knew best. And in this case, a
They pull the
huge
jobs. Like
backlash, a
you
huge
remember when the
backlash.
you remember when the antennas didn't work on the iPhone 4 and Steve Jobs
Oh,
said you're
yeah,
holding it wrong?
you're holding it right.
You're holding. Yeah, it's. I don't know. Like I said, they're willing to make a mea culpa and admit it. I think they're trying to litigate. They're trying to ameliorate any litigation. I I don't want them to. I want to see discovery. I want to see if this was intentional, because this usually happens when a company becomes so big, they get on their high horses. Now, two things could happen. It could bifurcate into the future, or an you know, what do they call it? 1984 Orwellian. So on one hand, Apple's in a position to make things better. They claim they were making things better. They claim they were being benevolent. Bless their hearts. They were helping your phone, but the facts seem to indicate it was pushing you to buy a new phone. You see, I want to know which direction was real and authentic. So
I
I want to
think
know.
that their solution, where they allow you to turn it on or off, that's probably the best way they could have gone, and they probably should have done that from the beginning. So I'm happy that they
We'll see.
eventually arrived at the right, way to do
I
this.
don't think you should have to turn it off. I think you should have to turn it on. And this is one of those things where it should be an opt-in, not an opt-out. Like maybe ping you and say, "Would you like us to turn this feature on? It will prolong your battery, but it may slow your device." You should have to turn that on. You
I
should not
think
have to turn it off.
I think that the feature saves people more headaches than it causes. In all honesty, I think that this was probably the right thing to do. Instead of phones dropping dead, shorting out, any number of things, I think this was probably the right thing. I think it
You could be right, but
saves.
we're mad. So
Right.
we're mad.
So again, yeah, I think that this is probably the best course. I think that as an opt out, yes, the people with the know how would turn it off, and then they'd get a fully powered phone that would crash every occasionally, and then they would replace their battery. Um, I don't know. I feel like they handled it correctly, software wise, marketing wise, or other, or just bringing attention to it. They did it horribly. They did a horrible job. So, but like we said, they have a pseudo fix, and there will be litigation, like you mentioned. And hey, I think that's Apple for the next little bit. And of course, now they want you to talk about the HomePod, but we're not going to talk about HomePod.
The very expensive HomePod.
Yes, the very expensive HomePod. So, actually, we're going to switch over to some other stuff. Let's see, what can we not be mad at? And unfortunately, a lot of these are things that we're mad at.
Sorry.
I'll let you decide. I'll give you two choices. We can either talk about CNN and their attempt to bring a specific format of entertainment to, I guess, another format and failed. Or we can talk about Facebook, kind of the same thing, trying to bring content from Twitch and YouTube to Facebook.
We put them together.
Sure, if you can.
Okay. This is good. You're talking about where CNN paid gobs of money to this guy Casey Neistat, and he had this company called Beme about video. And I remember this. I don't know if we ever talked about this, but
I don't think we
everybody
did.
was jumping on board the live streaming content creation. They all wanted to be the next big they call them social influencers. Which, by the way, you're crapped when you have to name your product after the influences of alcohol. You're driving under the influence. Yeah, that's never a good thing, is it?
Right.
By that definition, you could be watching this guy's YouTube video while you're driving and be stopped. So, but anyway, long story short, it's all this attempt to get the millennials. It's traditional media, which is in this case CNN, saying, we're going to be cool, we're going to be hip, we're going to get these millennials, we're going to steal them away from Vine, which is gone, by the way, from Twitter, from all this stuff. Video was the future. Everybody declared. BuzzFeed's doing it. Facebook's done it. CNN tried to do it. But instead of CNN creating a platform, they decided to buy a platform. They're attempting to buy a platform. Do you remember that skit on Saturday Night Live with Steve Buscemi, where Steve Buscemi's dressed like a high school kid? And it's a very famous meme online
Yes.
where he's holding the skateboard. He's like,
Hello,
fellow
fellow
kids.
kids. Right. Yeah.
Yeah, that's CNN. And there's so many stories like this, but they come in different forms. Like Apple, for example, going back to Apple, Apple's trying to get into the movie business. They're trying to get into the Netflix business. So now they're buying whoever's popular. We're gonna buy this artist.
Oh,
we're gonna get the guy who made La La
that
Land.
is what Sundance has become. Sundance, you show films that will be in theaters in 6 months to a year, and films that are pretty much already done. And companies go there and just buy film. Netflix bought like 13 of them. Amazon Prime bought like 7 of them. Like, yeah, that's what you do. You create things and then you purchase other people's things and say, look what I did, even though it was already done.
Mm-hmm. So the problem is with CNN, it didn't work. And because, with all due respect, millennials literally don't care about CNN. They care about Snapchat. They care about, I hate to say it, Facebook. They care about Discord. They care about so many other places. Nothing's going to save CNN from the same fate as Fox News, where their demographic is aging. It's older. You know, do you really want to watch CNN and see a commercial for catheters when you're 18? Or buying gold or reverse mortgages? You know, do you really think CNN's customers want to see Skittles commercials? Have you seen Comedy Central? Have you seen the commercials? They are not for the above 30 crowd.
Right.
And so it's a mixture that didn't work. And I think the creator, Casey, he acknowledged that CNN didn't know what the hell they were doing, and that's pretty clear. So I wouldn't call it, as the president would say, I wouldn't call it fake news. I just call it sloppy news. And as it relates to the Facebook thing, so Facebook's been one of the big champions of live streaming. They've done very well with it, and you have to forgive me. I don't know. Is Periscope still around? Is it still
Periscope.
there?
Maybe I think of like Prairie Dog, but yeah, Periscope is still a thing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Periscope was famous because Periscope got famous because a bunch of idiots would do like skateboarding tricks, and then crack their heads open and people would laugh. And but
That that
Vine was
and
around.
that and stealing content from concerts. Like you would use Periscope
Yeah,
to live
all
stream
kinds of stuff.
concerts. Right.
But there was the most famous Periscope guy was Scott Adams, the guy who did Dilbert. He became famous because he would Periscope himself and all this, and it became cool. But then I think Facebook got in the market, and Facebook came in, and they basically applied that technology to their existing user base, and it became hugely successful to the point where a lot of felonies are being committed on Facebook Live,
I saw that.
and
Yeah.
yeah, a lot. But I love it. Like it just saves the police a lot of time. So Facebook's now trying to leverage that enormous database of people with game streaming, aka Twitch. And you have to forgive me. I don't know the name of Microsoft's because they changed it.
Mixer.
Is it Mixer now? Okay, I
Mixer.
don't even.
Yep.
So they keep changing. That's a sign that it didn't work. And I caution everybody because Facebook's co-option of the Periscope MO worked very well. Um, but Facebook's co-option of other things has worked less well. Facebook has a lot to lose. Facebook's the largest social media platform, but Facebook is also the most profitable social media platform. Snap is not profitable. Snap is probably going by the way of the dodo. Twitter, the only thing keeping Twitter alive is Donald Trump. Like these old social media networks are dying. They don't make any money. Facebook makes a lot of money. They're very, very entrenched. And so they don't add this stuff willy-nilly like CNN did. So, however, that doesn't mean it will automatically succeed. You see a company like Microsoft, who in the past, uh, this is what I want the listeners to pay attention to. Just because a big established company invests in something doesn't mean it's going to work. Google couldn't save Buzz. They certainly couldn't save Google Plus. Wretched failure. Lots of failures just because you have a lot of money and time. A company that, we talked about this with Roku versus Amazon, and everything, how Roku could come in, very small company with very little funding, and dominate the market in a way that Google and Apple and Amazon couldn't. Same thing with streaming. So Twitch has the board. I believe Twitch is owned by Amazon, right? Did they
Right.
buy it?
Yep. Correct.
Yeah. So and Amazon conversely is getting into the ad business. So you're going to see this interoperability between the two companies as they compete with things like Google Home or Google Echo. We kind of joked at the Home Pod here a second ago, but I think you and I talked about this on our CES podcast for Popzara. Like at some point, all of these services are going to be just that. They're going to be services. You won't have to buy a HomePod that runs Siri. You won't have to buy a HomePod that runs Google. Your computer runs Twitch. It runs Mixer. It runs anything as long as it's downloadable. Facebook, the advantage is you probably already have it, and that's important. So
I, yeah.
will it go for games? I don't know if the demographic mix is that much, but I'm interested to see if it is.
It's one of those things that I feel like as much as every company, well, not even every company, but as much as Facebook wants to be the one-stop shop for your spare time, your entertainment, your socializing, that's not what we're seeing people actually do. Amazon, they kind of get that where they didn't try to roll Twitch into the Amazon store. They didn't try to do that. We're seeing numbers on Facebook, like they purchased some actually very large names when it comes to video game streaming. ESL's CS:GO, it was getting in the neighborhood of like 400,000 to 500,000 people watching a tournament, every time it was on. They took it to YouTube because YouTube paid them more money. Their viewership tanked to like 150, like 100,000, and its most recent one after it just got an exclusive deal with Facebook, because Facebook paid them even more money. They hit like a top of like 7,000 from 500,000. The platform still has a lot of growing to do, which is great. I'm sure there are people out there who look at the incumbents and go, "Wow, there's no room to expand here." But Facebook has a long way to go, and I'm not sure that people
Well,
want to mix their socializing with their
well,
video games.
Facebook, they certainly mixed their bank robbing with Facebook, so they certainly commit their murdering with Facebook.
That's true.
But I'll tell you this though, this could be another arms race, the same way we saw with MySpace, with Zynga, with Live.net, with LiveJournal, and then eventually Facebook, right? You remember when I don't know if you remember when MySpace was the biggest thing in the world,
I do.
and
Yeah.
it had 200 million users, right? And the Murdochs paid like $1 billion for it or whatever, and it was so large, everybody thought it was going to be the next big thing. Like if you listen to pop music from like 2003 to 2006, it's really dated. You know, find me on MySpace. Yeah, good luck. But eventually, Facebook won out. So when you talk about the growth of esports and everything, I want to be very clear about this. Esports thus far has been a huge failure. Like not quite a failure on the level of VR, but it's been a failure because it's not been able to grow outside of its base. And I've had this discussion many, many times about why it's been a failure because I don't know if there's a market for esports. They probably envision esports like the NFL or MLB. I think of esports more like sumo wrestling or ladies tennis. I look at it like it's going to be big, but it's never going to be what they think it's going to be. And they keep trying to reward these pro gamers. They try to make you think these guys are athletes. But you remember the movie Dodgeball
Yeah.
and how Dodgeball was like on ESPN, like channel 6? Like, that's what I think esports is. The way esports is designed right now is not growable to the mainstream audience. It's not the people are typically are pretty ugly. There's not a lot of sexy gamers. I'm sorry. It's predominantly ugly male. It's predominantly with games that are not exciting to watch. Then again, people said the same thing about baseball. Baseball's dull as dirt, but people watch it. But it's just not
I'm
exciting.
just saying you're making it sound like a traditional sport,
No, exactly,
male
exactly. But
dominated.
the problem is though, there's no auxiliary things. There's no participation from the gaming by itself is very exclusive. It's very antisocial in a way, and so it's really hard when you don't have any of the facts, and when you look at companies like Activision or Facebook or like you said Microsoft, Amazon that invest heavily, they're not getting a good return on this. Companies that have bet the boat on esports like Mad Cats have gone by the way of the dodo. And so what I'm saying is, I think there's room for it, but I think you can scale up. But if you want esports to become popular, like mainstream sports, you have to sell out like mainstream sports. Like I look at the NFL and I see absolutely nothing authentic about the NFL or baseball. I see sellouts, sellouts, sellouts that get paid multi-million dollars because they'll say anything if you pay the money. And true, gamers are more than willing to sell out. The problem is that we're building this network on Facebook. We're going to build Twitch. We're going to build Mixer. We're going to do all this. We're really getting the cart before the horse because the networks exist. YouTube exists. We exist. You exist. The network's already there. It's ready to go. It's the product. And until you improve the product, then it doesn't matter what your platform is going to be. It's not going to work. And I don't care how many times you try it. It's not going to work. It has to be done at the base level. And I think Facebook is probably better positioned simply because their audience tends to be non-gamers. I know that, and that's to your point. You said I don't know if the gamers are really compatible. Well, I got to tell you something. If you know what a Venn diagram is, right?
Oh,
So
yeah.
with overlap, yeah, of course. And I think the overlap between Facebook and the average person is much higher than the overlap between the general population and Twitch. You know, and you see all the time how professional gaming will kick out somebody because he said a gay slur. Then you find out that the person he said the gay slur to wasn't actually gay. That's how these people talk when they play the games. If you've ever played online, they say the nastiest crap, homophobic, racist, everything. That's part of what it is. You cannot take that and put it in the mainstream. The NFL did. The NFL has a lot of thugs and a lot of white trash and a lot of horrible human beings that beat their wives, but when they're on the TV, they're clean and squeaky, and they say anything, they're kicked off. That's what gaming needs to do. Gaming needs to hammer its product into something that's more palatable to the average person. Yeah, and to answer your question, I think Facebook could work, and I think Twitch could work. But I want to be clear. Twitch was not made by Amazon, and whatever Facebook's doing is probably not made by Facebook. So, or even Microsoft. They're buying existing technologies and applying them, thinking if we just have this thing, everybody will flock to us. Don't be surprised if it fails if you don't fix the source. Final word.
All right, yeah, no, we'll of course leave that there, and then we have like 3 more minutes. I want to get one more story in.
Oh,
It
can I
is.
say one thing?
Oh, go ahead.
I meant no disrespect to ugly gamers, because you make the world go round, and a lot of you are my friend, and I'm ugly too. So I'm just trying to say it's not a pejorative. I'm just saying, go to the gym, use a facial scrub, shave off that stupid hair, and nobody likes that mustache. Look hot, okay? Your life will be better.
I feel attacked. But with that being said, I will say that I did want to get one more story in, and just real quick. I mean, we're not going to go through all the details, but essentially, there's a game out there called Rainbow Six Siege. It was kind of sort of popular when it first came out. Its fan base, stayed loyal. It was able to, kind of keep limping along. And actually, I think it's more popular today, 2 years down the road, than it was when it was first released, and that's really hard for a game to do. It has since been dropped $20. It was available for $40. They had cosmetics, they had bundles and loot boxes, and
Cosmetics. I love that.
right. Well, that's what pays the bills. And here's the thing: after 2 years, and after a number of updates that are exclusively visual, they have gameplay fixes, but what they're essentially selling you now are cosmetic items, and they increased the price from $40 back to $60.
Did they really increase it, or did they increased it, but with that increase comes a lot of content that you would have had to buy separately, right?
The only thing, like they took away the base, the $40 one, and now you can only buy essentially the Game of the Year edition, which includes 10 loot boxes that you get when you buy the $6. Like essentially, they raised the floor 40 to 60 plus loot boxes. That's the only option now to get into the game, is to pay the full $60, which before you didn't have to.
You still don't have to buy anything. That's the thing.
You don't have to buy.
You don't have to buy anything. And here's the thing, though. This game's been out for what, like you said, 3 years?
2 years.
It's been out 2 years. It's been a long time, and it's well supported. So when you're buying into this, you're not buying a game like Homefront or something. Not Homefront. What's the game that Ubisoft put out? It was a big hit. They're gonna make a movie based on it.
No idea.
It was huge, big, huge game. Sold a lot. They're making a movie with Jake Gyllenhaal.
Okay.
Based on, I don't know, but that game came out, a huge hit. A lot of loot boxes, a lot of stuff. It was completely abandoned. A lot of these games get abandoned. They're not abandoning Rainbow Six. So on one hand, when we say, well, you have to pay this much more, you're not getting a product that's not supported. You're getting a product that's supported at least on some level. So I don't know. If it's your money, use it. Nope. You don't need college. Buy Rainbow Six.
There you go. So yeah, and unfortunately, we obviously have more to talk about, but the music means just about done. Folks, if you want to hear more of what Nathan does over there at Popzara with his team of writers, which are great in their own right, popzara.com, of course. And if you want to check out what we've done here on the show today or in the past week, including articles and things like that, computeramerica.com. So Nathan, until next month, which I believe, as we mentioned before the show, this 3rd, only a couple of weeks away. We look forward to having you back. Yep. So, and everyone else out there, thank you for tuning in, and congratulations to our winner. We'll get their prize out to them ASAP. And folks, thanks for tuning in to Computer America. Be sure to catch us next week as we have on the show another 5 days of, of different, yes, including Monday, looking forward to it, Wallpaper Engine. Yeah, they're a great product from Steam. But everyone, tune in next week, Computer America. Have a great one. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.